Joe Lartey, my guest here on Prime Take. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. I feel honored, highly honored for you to have me in mind towards the end of my life. Right now I'm 96, and for you to be thinking of a 96-year-old man and then pack your camera and other accoutrements and come to talk to me is great. Very great.
You're not getting to the latter part of your life. In fact, you have many more years to live. You have got many more years to live. We need to tap on the knowledge that you've got, and you'll live for many more years.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for wishing me good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So what was your genesis like? Your upbringing?
The upbringing was rather strict, very strict. My dad, my mother were all leaders of a Methodist church at Corlegono. They played a major role in the establishment of the Mount Zion Church of today. And my dad, as well as my mother, they were very strict. So strict that I had an English friend who nicknamed my dad as Killjoy Father. Killjoy. Because I wasn't allowed to do many things. I wasn't allowed to go to cinema. I wasn't allowed to do sports. I wasn't allowed to practice music. I remember very well that my brother-in-law, the man who married my sister, had an organ in his house, and he decided to teach me to play the organ. And I went to his house one night to learn to play the organ. When I came back, my dad gave me a good hiding. I was sick for about 2 weeks. Yeah. And you know, it made me very sad. Then I gave up the organ. Then at school, government school in Accra, I joined the school band, and I was playing the side drum. So I was playing the side drum on the day the then Asante Hini visited Accra. And my dad was with an uncle of mine on top of what we call ABBA, AMA today. The AMA, they were up there and they were watching the scene. And I came along playing the side drum with the band. And my father saw me. The next day he went to Accra Government Boys School where I was attending, went to the headmaster, H.M. Grant was the name, and told him to get me out of the band. And I was cashiered from the band immediately. I stopped playing the band. So many things. I wanted to play the mandolin. Mandolin. I brought a mandolin to the house. The old man saw it. He took it and broke it up. Then the owner came. The owner came demanding the mandolin, and he paid for it. And that was the end of my mandolin course. You know, very interesting, very strict. 7 o'clock, the gate to the house was locked with a big padlock. Nobody went out, nobody came in. You know, and I wasn't allowed to have friends. I didn't have friends, but the few friends that I had, my dad would always order 6 uniforms for school, 6. And I used to give them to my friends, give some of them to my friends over the wall. I threw it over, you know. So the childhood was pretty tough, very tough.
Very tough.
And it led in some way to my joining the British Navy at the age of 16.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. I joined the British Navy at the age of 16. Went to war. I'm an ex-serviceman. And when they were banned, let me say we, because I was part of it, we marched to the castle, the 28th February incident. Yeah, I was part of it. I was in my naval uniform, small boy. My grandmother said, "Don't go, you don't go," and I went. When the shooting took place and we ran back and I was trying to get back to the house, my grandmother said he should open the gate for. Interesting. So
Really?
yeah, I'm an ex-serviceman. I had my medals, and I can tell you the story of my medals. I had a classmate from Accra Government Boys School. When I was transferred to teach at Lartey, and I was at Lartey teaching, and this friend of mine came to find out whether I could get him a job. I could get him into, something to do. A day came, I left the house and went to school. By the time I got back, he had stolen everything of mine. Oh. My medals, my discharge certificate, everything. And we went with it to Koforidua. They got him. The police managed to get him. But they forgot to ask him about the things that he stole. So I lost all that. Oh. And he was sent to prison in Akrupong. And funny enough, the day he was discharged and was going back to Accra, yeah, he was standing by the roadside waiting for a car. Yeah, and I was in the main truck leaving Lartey for Accra, and I saw him. Interesting. I was very sad. He's dead long ago. Oh,
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's part of the adventures.
Were you the first child of your parents?
I was the first child of the two of them. Okay. But my father had some other children before he took my mother. Your mother?
Okay. So he was he in the military? Why was he so strict? Your father?
My father was a civil servant. A civil servant in the Treasury Department. Okay. Yeah. He served in Cape Coast, served in Tamale, before he retired at the age of 54. In those days, we were retiring at that age.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So tell me, do you have other siblings?
Yes, I have a number of siblings.
Oh, okay.
That is an aspect of my life which will appear in the memoir. I won't tell you.
Oh, you're writing a memo?
I'm writing a memo.
Oh, wow.
My life without a memo will be like Shakespeare without Macbeth.
but how many siblings do you have?
Siblings?
Yeah.
Right now I have two.
Okay.
A lady and a gentleman.
So how was it like with your siblings growing up?
Oh, well, in actual fact, when my father married my mother, they had me and a second one called Nate.
Okay.
And he died at the age of 7.
Oh.
So I was left alone. And because I was the only one between the two of them, that was one of the reasons why they were so strict. They wanted to ensure that I survived. And I think they were right. Here am I, 96. I've survived. My father died at 84. And I have lived up to 96. My mother died at 91. 91, my mother died. And I buried my mother. I buried my mother with the help of other siblings. And, my mother also had 1 or 2 children before she met my dad. Okay. And I have a big picture of the two of them.
Yeah, I've seen it here.
Yeah, that's right.
I've seen it here. So tell me, how were you able to get yourself into the Navy when, despite how strict your father was?
Oh yeah, I ran away. I bolted. That's the word to use. I bolted from the house, from my family, and I worked it all out with friends. I went at that time during the war. The British Navy was recruiting some Ghanaians at Takoradi. Okay. I think they still have a base there, Takoradi base. So we arranged. I was only 16, so we had to falsify my age, so that I could get into the Navy. By the time they knew I didn't give them the correct age, it was too late. I had taken the oath and therefore they couldn't get me out. So I continued until the end of the war. You know.
Which war was that?
The Second World War.
The Second World War?
Yeah, the Hitler War.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But what age did you give them? You were 16. What age did you give them?
23.
You give
23.
So you added 7 years your age.
And I had to brush my hair backwards to make me look old, and funny things we did. Funny things.
That's quite an interesting one. But at what point did you switch into sports? Because many of us know you for your broadcasting career.
My dad did not allow me to do sports. He didn't allow me, but I did sports. And when I started doing commentary on GBC, he sent for me and he said, "Who taught you to play football?" I learned to play football partly in the Navy. When I came out and I went into teaching, I was also playing football, doing sports. You know, so you know, he was disappointed.
So when you came back from the Navy, did you go back to the house? Because you bolted to go to the Navy. Did you go back home?
Yes, I bolted, but I went to. My dad was streaking. He was, you know, emaciated. I came. He had a big towel around his waist, and we embraced each other. He held me, and he said, he looked at me. I was in my naval uniform. He said, and I quote, he said, "I did not know that the Navy could make men out of boys," unquote. And then we shook hands and I started telling him the story, some of the things that I had done in the Navy. And it was a memorable occasion. I've never forgotten it.
So this one, when you came back, he didn't fight you?
No, he didn't fight me. He was happy I was back. Very happy. You don't know the things they did for me. Through a party and so on.
Oh wow!
Yeah, because it wasn't a joke.
The boy became a man.
Oh yeah, you know the prodigal son.
Yeah, the prodigal son actually. The prodigal son. But at the Navy, what was life at the Navy like?
Life in the Navy was interesting. Interesting. We were knocked out of our beds early in the morning around 5:30, and then we started doing all the necessary things. We have I don't know, it's no longer there, I'm sure. But we had a base in Freetown.
Yes.
The training center was called King Tom Barracks. That was where we trained. And then after training in King Tom, you were drafted to another barracks called Kisi.
Okay.
Kisi Barracks. That's just at the, it's a shore base. And there you had all the ships and the other things, all the arrangements were there, you know. So when you were recruited, or when you were recruited in those days in Takrady, then they transferred you to Freetown to do the training. Then after the training, they will be drafting you to that ship, this ship, and so on. You know.
Okay.
And it was very interesting. And when you're drafted into a ship, maybe a big ship, and these were not merchant ships, they were warships. We had corvettes, we had destroyers, we had submarines, and you know, and we had a big ship in Freetown called Philoctetes. Philoctetes was a supply ship. I was in the supply department.
Oh, okay.
So we're working, I was getting things from Philoctetes to the shore, to other ships and so on. You know, very interesting. They were very careful about our health. If you went to town and picked up a disease, you were cashiered straight away. I was discharged. Yeah. So it was interesting. We attended church services. They didn't play with that. We attended church services on board, ashore. We were attending church services. We had parades. And the Navy, what I liked about the Navy, they made sure that you had everything that you would need in the course of your service.
Oh, okay.
Your shoes, your clothing, your caps, your everything, your raincoat. You had a raincoat for warm weather, raincoat for
cold weather.
That for cold weather. And so when there was a parade, when we had a parade, there was no way you could say you couldn't attend. You dare not, you know. And like I had in mind, the training and the discipline in the Navy was superior to what I had at home. You know. So while others were complaining about the naval discipline,
yeah.
I was taking it easy.
Because I'd
been prepared for it inadvertently.
Yes, yes.
The old man didn't know he was preparing me for the Navy.
For the Navy, he didn't know that. Yeah. But tell me about the World War II that you said you were a part of. Because considering a young man with strict parents, all of a sudden in the Navy, yeah. Then there was the World War I. But how was it like?
Well, I went into the Navy because there was a World War I. I went into the Navy because because there was war. If there wasn't war at the time, I couldn't have gone into the Navy.
So you went into the war?
I was an Accra Academy doing my secondary school course.
Oh, okay.
And I ran away from the secondary school, Accra Academy, and joined the Navy, you know. And I joined the Navy because there was war and they were recruiting. What they did was they wanted Africans who could stand the weather, the tropical weather. That's why they recruited some of us here. So immediately the war ended, we were discharged.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know, yeah.
So after the war, you were discharged?
Yeah, that's right. I came back. That's why I came home.
Oh, okay.
And then went to report to my dad. And there he was, grieved, but he was happy to see me back.
Yeah.
You know,
he prodigal son. He will always be happy. But you said, despite the strictness of your parents, for you not to do sports, for you not to do music, you still got into sports. What sort of sport did you do?
Football. I was a very poor footballer. Yeah. When I trained, I went to do my teacher training at Winneba. The Winneba Training College. Yeah. It was then brand new, fresh. We were the first intake.
Like the pioneers of that?
Yeah, pioneers of that. Yeah. And during the period in the training school, we were playing football. We were doing sports.
Oh, okay.
Because as a teacher, you should know sports. You're going to teach children. You know, so I was.
Now you had the freedom from your parents to participate in sports.
Oh, I mean, then I was a man.
You were now a man.
That's right. So my parents didn't come into the picture.
Yeah, I see.
You know,
I see.
I had, you know, after the war, after the Second World War, when those of us who were discharged, both from the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force, we had to be given jobs in civil streets.
Oh, okay.
That is at home. And the jobs were not there. And that was why we organized a march to the Osu Castle to tell the governor that we needed jobs. We held a rally at the Palladium Cinema House. You know the Palladium, very near the Methodist Cathedral. Yeah. That's right. We met there. And from there we started a march to the castle. Now when we got to the crossroads, there was this man, Emery, a white man. He was in charge of a platoon of Jane Roe policemen to stop us going to the castle. And he ordered them to shoot, but they refused to. So he took the rifle from one of them and shot Ajete and the rest. So from that point, we started running back to Accra. And it was something that you should see, not described.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll give you the details in my memo.
But that might have been some scary experience, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it was a scary week. That was when the looting started. There was looting, shooting.
Okay.
And the looting went on for weeks. So they brought troops from Nigeria to law and everything broke down in Accra, in Ghana. So they brought troops from Nigeria to control us in Ghana. It was interesting. And these chaps came, they robbed our people, they were searching houses and so on. They robbed our families before they went away. There was rumor that on their way back they drowned in the Volta River. But it's a story that I never confirmed. Yeah.
Okay. That's quite an interesting one.
Yeah.
But let's move to your professional career.
That's right.
I think we heard a lot about your journalism career.
Yeah.
How did it start?
Well, it started like most people. You start writing a little bit on your own, yes. Maybe writing to the newspapers. In our time, in the days that we had Azikiwe, who became a president in America, Nnamdi Azikiwe. He was in Ghana.
Oh, really?
And he was one of the people.
One of them, he's the former Nigerian leader.
Oh yes, he was here, and he was one of the people who opened the eyes of the Ghanaian youth to independence. They started clamoring for, this and that during his time here. So the British government in Ghana cashiered him. They sent him out of Ghana. They took him to court, charged him with. They gave him a charge of sedition or something. Yeah. And they deported him from Ghana. And my eldest brother, he was interested in Azikiwe. He was one of the apostles of Azikiwe, And from that association, I learned a lot from my eldest brother, G. Ankra.
Okay.
So Azikiwe left Ghana, and after he left, things started taking. We had newspapers. He was in charge of one of the newspapers in Ghana. I think it was the Morning Post.
Okay.
He was editing, and his editorials were stinking. He was, bamboozling the British colonial system, and they didn't like him. So I think they managed to get him out. He left Ghana, and people were sorry. So from there, I started having ideas about journalism, how to write. And my eldest brother gave me a little bit of tuition, allowed me to read. And when I was in the Navy, interesting, when I was in the Navy, we were running shifts. On the ship, we ran shifts, morning shift, afternoon shift, night shift, and so on. And during our free time, when we weren't on duty, we practiced public speaking.
Oh, okay.
So we wrote topics on pieces of paper, folded them, put them into a hat, and then when you picked a subject, then you had to speak on it. That was the beginning of my interest in public speaking. And when I came, I was discharged. There was a shop in Accra, Luther Street.
Yes.
There was a bookshop there. That was where I bought my first public speaking book, called Public Speaking and Influencing Men in Business. That's the title of a book. So it developed. One interesting.
From one stage to the other.
Oh yeah. So I learned to do sport outside my home. I learned to do sport outside my home, and it helped me. You see, because later in my life, I managed I got a friend, an American Peace Corps retired fellow. The two of us, we brought Toastmasters to Ghana, and Toastmasters today, we have about 30 clubs in Ghana.
Oh wow!
Teaching people how to speak without fear. without hesitation. You know.
So before you got into journalism fully, in fact, which year did you get into journalism?
I can't tell you. You know, the beginning was checkered.
Yeah.
So I can't say exactly, but I got into it. I never went to the training school here.
Yeah.
The Institute of Journalism. I organized my first public speaking course in Institute of Journalism.
Meanwhile, you never attended the school.
24th May, 19 something. I've forgotten it.
Yeah, I can understand.
Yeah.
But there was this interesting story about one Richard Akwe.
Okay. Richard Akwe.
Yes.
The Lion Heart.
The Lion Heart.
That's right.
Tell us about him, because we are made to understand that, like, he was one of the founding fathers of Ghana football.
Yeah, correct. He played a major role. And he and one Adakwa from Ashanti, they played a major role in the founding and development of especially the league system. It took a lot of time for the league system to operate as we are doing it today. They will start, it will collapse, they will start, it will collapse, and so on. So it wasn't easy. And Richard Akwe, the Lionheart, he was chairman. They put him there as chairman, and he was very strict. Maybe, I'm saying maybe, he was dictatorial in some of his activities, but there he was. And he played a good role, helping to make football or soccer a thoroughly good thing. Yeah, that's right. So we respected him. He founded a school. He had a school in Accra, a very big school. I think the school is still there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But I remember reading about the football history of Ghana, where in the 1940s,
yeah,
he accused Kofi Bedu of using his pen to get him out of power, because the Black Stars then were supposed to go to the UK for some friendly games.
For a tour, yeah.
Yes.
Well, Kofi Bedu had a pen that I think we haven't had again in journalism in Ghana. He was a terrific writer. And if you ask me, I'll say he had a poisonous pen. Yeah. When Dr. Buzia became Prime Minister of this country, his writings were some of the factors that got to get Buzia out.
Wow.
Oh yeah, he could write, and his command of English language, superb. Quite recently I wrote to him, I wanted to visit Asante Hini, and he never wrote back. I don't know why.
Maybe he's still busy. Maybe when he hears this, he'll call you. Maybe when he hears this, he'll call you. But talk to us about the football history. You spoke about the Lion Heart, yeah, where, like I mentioned, he accused Kofi Bedu of using his pen to get him out of power. He just mentioned that his pen was too poisonous. So the poisonous pen got Richard Akwe out of power. Then a champion, right?
Oh, well, after Richard Akwe, a whole lot of things happened. Yeah. Development of the, one time good, another time bad, and so on. Till we've now been able to study to make the league system work.
But I don't understand, were you in journalism?
I was in journalism from '61, professionally.
Oh, okay.
That was when I joined the GBC.
Yeah.
And initially, I wasn't going to be with the sports department. I was sent to the talks and features department. Talks and features. And I was writing stories and editing stories that other people wrote from outside. Editing them because I had a teaching experience and they thought my English was good. So I was doing this editing. Then somebody took ill in the sports department. Oh, okay. And a man called Festus died. He joined the army later, yeah. So he ended up as Colonel Adai. He was in charge of the sports department. The sports department was known as the outside broadcast department. The outside broadcast department, which we call the OBs,
Yeah.
the outside broadcast department contained the sports department. So the real name of the department that I later joined was OBs. OBs, the main thing they did was sports and ceremonials.
Oh, okay.
You get it? So somebody fell sick in the OBs department and was out of work. And I was asked to go on relieving duties at the OBs. So I went. And after I had, the man was about returning to the department, Festus Adai refused to let me go back because he thought I was a good material for the OBs department. And there was a tug of war between him and the head of programs, a very tough guy called Joe Lartey, not Lartey,
okay.
Joe Lartey.
Okay.
He was the head of programs. And they tussled. Eventually, Festus won the tussle. And I was asked to stay in the OBs department. Then I took up the commentary, and I'm telling you the story of how the Over to You developed.
Yeah. My
boss was Colonel Festus Adai. He was a very good commentator. He had a very good voice. I always tell people he had a velvet voice, beautiful voice. And he saw what I could do. So anytime there was a commentary, something to be done, sports and ceremonial, I shared the commentary with him. He would start, or he would ask me to start, tell people about the scene, and then when I finished with the scene, he would take over. I say, over to you, Festus. When he finished his bit, he would say, over to you, Joe. And we covered a number of interesting. When Temahaba was commissioned, we did a commentary. When the Queen visited Ghana the first time, he and I and somebody from BBC called Godfrey Talbot, we were sitting on a tall scaffolding at the airport. When the Queen arrived, she came in a Boeing 707. And when the plane stopped and she descended, she said, I am here at last. Unquote. I am here at last. Why? Because the visit of the Queen to Ghana that time kicked up a lot of national debate. Should she come or not come? Should she come or not come? And it went forwards and backwards. Halfway through the process, the Queen was pregnant, she had a baby, and so couldn't come. And finally, the Queen came. So when she landed in this tropical, she said, I am here at last. And then the chiefs with the umbrellas, the exhaust from the 707 was blowing their umbrellas. And the whole place was agog.
Wow.
That was one of the interesting topics, interesting ceremonials that we covered.
Yeah. Now, give us a brief history of Ghana football.
Well, Ghana football started quite a long time ago. It was one Britain. He was headmaster of government school in Cape Coast. He started the thing, and he recruited a few local boys, and they were practicing under moonlight and so on. And bit by bit, it developed until Accra Hearts of Oak came in. Then there was Stanfast. Stanfast died. For a very long time, we had Hearts of Oak and Stanfast. But Stanfast is gone. Stanfast is now Olympics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it went on like that. That way, we had problems with coaching. So when Ohinijam became the sports director, as I told you, Kwame Nkrumah was interested in sport. and he knew Ohinijan was interested in sport and was doing it. He was around Richard Akwe and so.
Oh, okay.
In Sawam. He was doing football from Sawam, and he was there. So when Richard Akwe gave way, there was this one. Then we had problems with coaching. So director of sports.
So Richard Akwe gave way to Ohinijan.
Let me say, Richard Akwe's period passed off, and then a new period with Ohinijan in it. Adakwa in Cape Coast, in Sawam. No, Adakwa was an Ashanti.
Oh, okay.
And then they picked up the loose ends and started developing it. And Ohinijan did a lot. He was more or less acting at the instructions of Nkrumah. They brought in the Real Madrid. Nkrumah personally organized that part of our history in football and brought the Real Madrid to Ghana. They played against the Black Stars, and it ended up in a 3-3 draw, you see, and it went on. Then Ohinijan developed, we were told at the instruction of Kwame Nkrumah, he developed the Republicans. Real Madrid came, then we had the Republicans.
We had Republicans.
And the Republicans brought a lot of problems. People, they were picking the best from each of the league clubs, and people didn't like it.